And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Mastermind here on LIB Radio, LIB TV on livinginblack.com. The Mastermind Sundays is where you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 7 p.m. East Africa time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives. We deal with entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development, Pan-African affairs, sustainable development. Today's date is Sunday, the 12th. I think it's the 12th. It is the 12th of October, the year 2025 in the Western calendar, the Gregorian calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. Welcome to the Mastermind, and welcome to my partner in journalism here today with me. I'm proud to feature you, Baba Junius. I hope you are in great shape today.
Yes, indeedy, I am, and raring to go.
All right, it will be you and I. Dwara had to take care of some last minute family business, and I know he's taking care of his business. We always love having the young brother's voice here. I think he does a good job of balancing out the voice of the younger generations as opposed to your and my coming from the experienced baby boomers.
Yeah, and it brings in a unique perspective because, quite frankly, I'm not in touch with those generations on that kind of level. So he offers some optimism that there are younger people who are committed to the struggle and committed to the uplift of our people. Because I see so much apathy and lethargy and just, I guess, escapism and things like that in our generation.
It is an it is such a pleasure to have the young brothers voice in, and I do completely agree with you. And sometimes I know we, as baby boomers, have a tendency to project our generation onto all the generations that have followed us. In one way, that's normal because we want to project our wisdom, our acquired wisdom, our senior years, the experiences that we have witnessed. We want them to be accessible to all of that. Yet at the same time, the reality is so much of that comes before they're even born, and we have to look at ourselves. How much do we really concern ourselves with what was happening before we were even born? You understand the point I'm making?
Yeah, and I think that just shows how disconnected we are from an intergenerational engagement, because in
Mm-hmm.
indigenous societies that doesn't happen. You know, there's always a focus on an appreciation of wealth, of the wealth of wisdom and experience, but also the expectation that the younger generation will keep the traditions alive because they are actively passed on by the elders.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a critically necessary process that the elders must have a means of projecting to the younger generations the things that needed for the generations to survive. It seems to me, and correct me if you think I may be stepping over the line here, but it seems to me like in so many ways the younger generation is reflecting this degeneration of society that you and I have directly witnessed over our 70 plus years of living on this in this country and on this planet.
Exactly. And what we're seeing, but we don't really, I think we take it for granted, is the impact of the media. and the technology, because now the powers that shouldn't be have the means to directly impact us on a 24/7, 365 basis. Remember, I guess you remember when television went off at 12 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Saw the snowy screen and
That's
playing
right.
the national anthem and all that. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. There's ubiquitous media everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
back, I guess, in the 80s or what have you, had science fiction or political movies like The Manchurian Candidate, where they showed this constant beaming of media. It was always in the background. Well, that exists now, but the media is in the foreground because you got your devices. And we have
Mm-hmm.
people in all generations who are linked and addicted to their devices. And so that's a constant access point. It's a constant way right now that they can surveil us. There's a constant way that they can track us. And I believe that they're beaming signals that impact our energy and that impact our thought processes, in addition to the poor. What you talk about, the world war against us, but they now
Mm-hmm.
call it omni-war, what I'm calling omnicide, where they're out to actually destroy, ultimately, the natural order. They intermediately they want to supplant their order and their system that reflects their consciousness, the Urugu consciousness, but basically they're out to overturn the natural order altogether.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting that you should mention this. I just got this book in the mail, 2 days ago? I just ordered it a couple of days ago. This book here I have in front of me. Let me see if you can see it. This book is entitled, bear with me, it's entitled Surveillance Capitalism, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, The Fight for a Human Future at the New Frontier of Power by Shoshana Zuboff. Have you heard of this book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism?
No, not familiar with the author either, but it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the Zionist global surveillance monitoring and techno-totalitarian system.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, this unit that they have called Unit 8200 is mostly nerdy whiz kids that are now in their early to mid 20s who were nurtured and taught programming, gaming, all the things for the AI and the technology. And so they were taught coding. They also taught hacking, because hacking is going to be an element of suppression and control. And they're engaged in a lot of this stuff that the biometric facial recognition, the biometric tracking, the programs that we were familiar with that have multiplied exponentially, like it was promised back around 9/11 and all of that. Now you have the Palantir and all of those. So that book, I'm sure that book talks about some of those things. It probably also talks about what's in the works, what we're going to see in the not too distant future.
Mm-hmm. The theme of the central theme of the book is really centered around the emergence of Google, the search engine, as well as Facebook. And when we talk about the term surveillance capitalism, the term essentially translates to you and I are increasingly ubiquitous across the web, and that the surveillance capitalists they scan all areas of our social media and our search engine, all of that, and all of that becomes a big database for them that they sell to whoever will buy for whatever reason. So yes, that would include the national security establishment, which she does talk about, as well as the illicit security establishments. But it really comes down to the fact that the corporations have, in many ways, taken over functions of government. It used to be we worried about the NSA and other spy agencies monitoring our activities. Nowadays, the way we use smart media and social media and everything else, or smart devices and social media, they are spying on us. And it does cover the use of cell phones to monitor anyone who does not deliberately close out that circuit by which the cell phone is in real time connected to the web.
What's interesting, you talked about smart technology. Smart stand, and I was going to talk about this today also. So we're in really this real synchronistic type of mode already. And we didn't converse prior to the show, coming on the show.
Yeah, we think alike.
Right. You have that energy and the creator and the ancestors are working. So SMART stands for self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology.
That's right.
We think SMART means advanced, or that, this is progress. But you look at what it stands for, we're being monitored, we're being analyzed, they're reporting back, like you said, to these major data centers. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I talked about people complaining about their electric bill. These bills have increased to support and undergird these data centers, these AI and surveillance data centers, these monitoring that are taking all this information from the smart devices, the drones, all of that, and they're being stored in these huge servers and these huge data centers that require a lot of electricity. And quite naturally, the powers that shouldn't be are passing the cost on to us. So we're subsidizing our own enslavement, because this is going to be part and parcel to the layout and the play out that's going to make Big Brother look like sandbox stuff.
Once again, can you give us that acronym for what SMART stands for?
Self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology.
All right. I'm going to just check it up. Now, where did you get that? Where did you get that from? I'm sorry. That, what's it called?
An acronym.
Yeah, the acronym. Thank you. Where did you get that acronym?
It was something I saw this morning. I can't. Let me go and see if I can look at my history and where I was.
Okay. Well, I did pull it up in a quick AI search engine.
I think I got it from State of the Nation. It's this article called "Who is Really Pulling the Strings at the Very Top of the Global Power Structure." I think that's where I got it from. Yeah,
well, what I found is really quite interesting. I'm going to share that in a second. First of all, let me greet our listeners, because our listeners are really the stars of the party, if you ask me. We have 4, Africa 1. She's checking in from the UK, Hotep Mastermind Panel, and Global LIB Family. I missed the first couple of minutes. What did I miss about Brother Dwara? Well, we just say that Brother Dwara has taken this Sunday off as he attends to some family affairs. And he did send me a note this morning, and we expect to have him back with us next week. So, yeah, I agree. You agree. Brother Dwara is a critical voice here in this mastermind that we're sharing here today. Brother Osei Kamau, he's responding to the question I asked, where are you listening from? We're live. And he said, listening from Los Angeles, great to have you in the house. Ed is checking in. He says, greetings to the family. And Queen Mother Kashiba is checking in as well. She says, Grand Rising. How about Alexa and Siri? Need we ask, Baba Junius, what about Alexa and Siri?
Well, they're part and parcel of that. That's the tie-in. I mean, I don't know if folks are old enough to remember the cartoon series, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon series, the Jetsons, which
Mm-hmm.
is futuristic family, a father, mother, a little boy, and a girl, and they were living in the future. Of course, they were Europeans, and they
Yeah,
had all
there
these.
are the black people were somehow eliminated. There were no black people in
They
the
were
future.
never saw any person of melanin in that series. So they had the
Mm-hmm.
robots. They had, I think the robot was Rosie, and they had all kinds of gizmos and gadgets that we are now seeing being employed and deployed in our society. So she's absolutely right. This whole interaction, plus the story, those cartoons, and some of these other science fiction television shows and motion pictures are preparing us to interact with these gizmos as if they are human beings, and they will become critical aspects and companions as we go forward, to the point where, you know, given the nature of Urugu, they'll be more reliant and have more emotional connection to them than they do their fellow humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. I want to share with you a couple of things. One, I did look up how to turn off surveillance devices on your SMART phone, and I deliberately, let them know we're on to them with that SMART. But here's what I found when I did a quick look on smart self-monitoring analysis and reporting technology is a monitoring system using hard drives and solid state drives to predict and report on their reliability. But it also talks about smartphone. And this is what we want to talk about. Really, we want to focus in on the detriment of the smart phones. But the acronym SMART actually comes out of self monitoring on hard drives and solid state drives to predict, and report on their reliability.
Well, yeah, but as it has been employed, you have the surveillance and the harvesting. Uh, that smart technology for the reliability of the devices itself, because it's important that they want to be able to continue to harvest that data on us that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And the commercial use is just one aspect of it, because they have to incentivize it for those people who are not in the inner circle, meaning that the ones who are not really the shot callers or the big uh, string pullers. So they have to incentivize it for them, but it's also a way to make money, because they control most of the large entities anyway. So they can have more money to roll out an even more nefarious agenda. So remember,
Mm-hmm.
they play chess, three-dimensional chess. So every move has multiple purposes. And so, yes, they want to monitor what they're doing. Just like as they move forward into AI will become very smart like. It will do the programming, it will do the coding for itself. So once it moves into beyond a certain generation, it will be hard to alter the makeup and the focus of that AI technology, or what it's being used for in that particular scenario. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's important for us to realize that in the initial stages, AI, the engineers, the programmers, the coders are either wittingly or unwittingly programming their own biases into the AI. And we've seen that in many instances, particularly with this, where they were using it to predict recidivism to determine whether a person will be released from prison or incarceration or not, what degree of monitoring and control they would be subjected to. And lo and behold, most of the melanated people, they predicted that they would be recidivists, and which led to some of them not being released at all.
Mm. This is all moving in a certain direction. I think it's critical that our audience understand that passivity will not check the rise and the proliferation of the spying surveillance society. And that I suggest that if we don't stop it now, this is not something we want to pass on to our grandchildren's generations and generations moving forward. I think the next couple of generations, that would be Gen X and the millennials, are already deep into this. At a certain point, I think we're going to have to stop it now and never let it rise again.
But
is there a will to do that?
No, because I was just about to say, as we have said on numerous occasions, the content as well as the devices themselves are addictive, and they are impacting our brains. The pop term is rewiring the brains, and the feedback loop that a lot of our people get from that is so addictive, it's going to be hard for them to give it up.
Mm-hmm. And then, can we trust going to Google, to YouTube, for a video on how to turn off your smartphone from spying on you? Well, when they're the chief proliferator of selling this, selling you to whoever's out there ready, willing, and able to buy.
Yeah, but there's certain search engines that are more reliable than Google in terms of guaranteeing, quote unquote, your privacy or not being subjected to the filtering algorithms. So those are the ones you probably want to use.
That's right. How to turn off your surveillance. So I did pull up a video from YouTube that I put up for everyone. But Baba Judy's, I agree. We should not necessarily rely solely on YouTube to find a solution to turn off our surveillance device. And it's even found that physically turning off your phone does not stop it from engaging in this behavior. Now, if you are able to quickly take the battery out of your phone, that does turn off the device, but that's inconvenient because then you want to take another call.
Well, again, they have studied us, and they know that we're addicted. Some more so than others, but nevertheless, we are addicted, and they have shaped society so that you will become totally dependent on it. So that becomes a challenge. Like a lot of these devices have parental controls on them, but most people don't take advantage of them. The demand for having these devices is so great that a lot of times the parents just succumb, even though some people have to make a choice. Well, do I get this smartphone, or do I have nutritious food in the house? Or do I do some other things? So again, we have reached a point that Mussolini defined fascism as the subservience of the state to the corporate structure, and I'm paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a techno-fascist society, and the government at this point has been made subservient to the special interests, and the technocrats are a special interest, as well as big pharma, as well as the media, as well as the, that whole they call FIRE, finance, insurance, and real estate. Those big entities actually control the government. Only the
Mm-hmm.
most naive people think that the United States government is designed to serve the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very important. We must resist. We must find ways to resist, but it's not going to be easy. It may take a generation to turn off all of these different avenues, spying, surveillance into our lives. This book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, the book is 690 pages, including the index. That's a lot of book. And of course, I've just gotten it and I'm just starting to read it. But we have to realize this has been accumulating probably since the 90s or even before, but really with the imposition of the internet into our lives has really opened this up to so much. It's not going to be easy turning it off, but it will for our grandchildren's generation and beyond. I think it will be well worth the effort that we take in our generation to do the best we can to turn this surveillance system off.
The challenge is the government, because it is being has been subsumed by the corporatist media, and because of the technocrats and those people who want to, I call them the Sethians or the Luciferians, who want to usurp the natural order. A couple of weeks ago, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but they call it the Brit card with the United Kingdom, the digital ID, the biometric tracking is being rolled out legislatively, and there is pushback there. Last I checked, there was like a couple of 100,000 signatures in the UK in opposition to this. I'm saying all this to say that we're talking about, okay, we can resist, and of course we can, but the powers that should not be are making it so it will be very difficult. And again, it comes down to, I keep referring to the camel in the tent. Once the camel gets his nose in the tent, for the most part, he's only going to go forward. He's not going to go backward. So once the nose is in the tent, it's almost all over. And so if you look around, particularly with the Five Eyes, they're all in collusion and conspiring to bring about certain things. So Canada, they have euthanasia and the assist in dying. I think that's on the agenda in the UK, and it may be on the agenda in New Zealand and Australia also. It just hasn't gotten traction here. They want that because it's all part of the global depopulation agenda, but it just hasn't poked its ugly head in Congress yet. And the operative word here, and this is yet. So, yes, we can resist, but from our perspective as leaders and thought influencers, how do we incentivize this resistance? Because on the other side, they have made having these devices into a status symbol. Look at all the people who scramble to get what is now the iPhone 17 or whatever it is now. So, and how the people camp out for a day and a half just to be the first to get one, and it becomes a status symbol to have. So, how do we counteract that and counterbalance that?
Yeah, that's the question of the day. Let me go to the chat. Looking, we see Brother Moja. That's Brother Daoudi. He's checking in from Ghana. He says, greetings, Brother Katie and the LIB family. Great to have you on, or great show, he says. Respect. Queen Mother Kashiva. Siri answered me from a room away. I was not talking to it. It's on my cell phone. Yeah, that people are finding just having one of these devices with us And just with this regular setup, we get it. Once we get the phone, if they say the word Siri quite often, or say the word Alexa, quite often the device will wake up. It won't wake up. It'll let you know it is awake and monitoring your call and ask, what do you want?
But not only that, I had an external webcam,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to notice that the activation light was on. I said, wait a minute, I didn't turn it on. I'm not online. So again, it has the capacity to surveil you, whether you're aware of it or unaware of it. It's doing that. So in my case, I got rid of it and got another one because I wanted one that was more high definition. But I was beginning to believe that I was being surveilled without my knowledge or permission.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is universal. I forget, what do they call them? It's called backdoor or something in these devices that allows
Mm-hmm.
third parties or another party to access your data. Remember, and Key talked about this data collection, and I referenced these data centers. We are being harvested, monitored, scrutinized, analyzed all the time. And they
Mm-hmm.
sell this information to these corporations and these big retailers or their representatives. They have created already a profile on you. They know
Mm-hmm.
what your likes and what your proclivities are. They know what your purchasing habits are, particularly if you're using a credit card or a debit card or some of these other electronic means. They have all that information and they're selling it. And stop and think about this. All the people in this country are subjected and part and parcel of this system. That's why they have to create these huge data retrieval, analysis, and storage systems. Keep in mind, they're using it. They have satellite imagery that is very precise, that can track you. They have your phone that's tracking you. They have all kinds of other gizmos, the drones, what you're going to be seeing, the biometric stuff that you see already in China that they're trying to replicate here. That's their goal. And once they implement the new digital currencies, it's all over. I mean, they're
I know.
right now they probably have a section that's trying to figure out how to even penetrate what they would call the black market. And I would really say it's a white market. Those people
Mm-hmm.
are semi off grid, who are bartering, who are trying to figure out ways that they can circumvent this surveillance.
Do you remember in the previous election, the Cambridge Analytical scandal?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
how many people remember that? Remember the bulk of the information and the distraction was about Russiagate, how Russia was
Mm-hmm.
using it, when in fact it was Cambridge Analytica that was gathering information and using it and inputting it into Google, Facebook, and all that to influence the election.
That's right. And for those who can't or aren't familiar with it, just real quickly, we're going to share a short piece here from this is from Wikipedia. Cambridge Analytica Limited, previously known as SLC USA, was a British political consulting firm that came to prominence through the Facebook Cambridge Analytical data scandal. It was founded in 2013 as a subsidiary of the private intelligence company and self-described, quote, Global Election Management Agency, unquote, SCL Group. And it was founded by longtime SCL executives Nigel Oakes, Alexander Nix, and Alexander Oakes. And it says Cambridge Analytica was hired by a variety of political actors, including the Trinidadian government in 2010 and the 2016 presidential campaigns of Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. The firm maintained offices in London, New York City, and Washington, D.C. The company closed operations in 2018 due to backlash from the scandal, although firms related to both Cambridge Analytica and its parent firm, SCL, still exist. So I guess they go out of business under one name, change the corporate papers, and continue business as usual.
It's like those fly-by-night roofing companies. They come by and they do some work and they rip people off, and they would complain. Folks would complain back in the day to the Better Business Bureau, and then if you had an ombudsman in your town or state or county or whatever, so what they would do is they would just do, like you said, they changed the corporate name and put a new sign on their truck and just do business as usual. And this is not just international organizations. I was a chairman of a board of trustees for a nonprofit, court-appointed special advocates, CASA, better known as CASA, for here in Camden County.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a fundraiser and we had a golf tournament. So one of the guys on the board, his buddy was a real estate agent. So he pushed the board to accept this guy as the prime sponsor, even though I felt we should have more sponsors, he could have been the prime, but we should have had more. And I had some people that were real estate people, but he took precedence, so they weren't going to use them. He ended up reneging on his agreement in terms of providing funds to the organization and also the event, which was a golf tournament. He attended, and because he was there, he did pay for the meal to the establishment, but there were other things he didn't do. So we took him to small claims court and went down to Camden. And so, those scenarios, if the other person doesn't show up unless they have asked for a continuance or provide some excuse, you automatically win. So Camden County automatically won. What he did was change. He went from Keller Williams to something else. He's still in business, but we can't get our money. So, and I'm just sharing this so that you know that this again is an Isfedian issue. This is what we're seeing is the moral bankruptcy and the ethical collapse of this country. That was always on shaky ground, but it's worse now.
Couple of notes have come in. For Africa One says, I'm reading Cultural Unity of Black Africa. Shekantijia, page 147, writes, quote, private life did not escape the omnipotence of the state, unquote, regarding the Greco-Roman Empire. So she asked the question, what's new? And I say that's a very important point you make. But the thing is the omnipotence of the state is distinct from the domination of the corporations, but only just a small mark. It seems like the state has yielded its ultimate authority to the corporations in so many ways. Is that absolute or is it just limited?
Well, it's moving toward absolutism. The goal, when you look at what's happening now, and I would encourage our viewers and listeners to do some research on technocracy. There are a lot of books on it. There are several websites on it. And because it's beyond fascism, it's not just companies and corporations corrupting the government. It's much larger than that. Then when you look at the technocracy, again, from a Luciferian or Sethian perspective, you include transhumanism, you include the global depopulation, you include the whole very facets of transhumanism, and as well as the depopulation, and also the control grid, because they want to reduce the global population to a certain number where it's easier to control, and they will have a system in place that's very similar to what's going on in China with what they call the social credit score. When you look at what that is and how the Chinese use it, and then look at how they're planning to roll that out in the West, it's much more dystopian. And people say, well, I'm not going to put up with that. I'll do it. I'll find do something. No, you won't, because they're going to control everything. AI is going to make AI, robotics, and animation are going to have a profoundly disruptive influence on this culture. And what we're seeing right now is a precursor to all of that. A lot of this stuff, what we're seeing is with this government shutdown, that there are going to be reductions, not rifts. They used to call it rifts, reduction in force. They're going to not just furloughs, they're going to be layoffs. And that's one of the things that's talked about in Project 2025. That's one of the things that this whole agenda is about. And this disruption is going to be balanced out in their mind in terms of what they're doing with what they call the universal basic income or the guaranteed basic income, because the economy as we know it currently is going to change, it's going to shift. The Great Reset, the demise of the U.S. dollar, and this whole exchange in currency, all of this is going to have a major disruptive impact on ordinary people. It's not just speculation. It's in the works as we speak. We're just being distracted from it.
That's right.
And so we won't see it coming.
That's right. A couple of comments have come in. I see Stray Godzilla has joined us on YouTube. He writes, U.S. obviously slipping into a corporate state. Walmart can privatize an army? Question mark.
That wouldn't be unusual. Remember the Dutch East India Company had their own army. They had they influenced. They were granted a charter by the monarchs, but they held more sway and more check than the monarchs. Ultimately, as things rolled out, the monarchs were like their silent partners.
Yeah, so, and remembering slightly over a century ago when striking union workers were assaulted by the military using machine guns. The military, in this particular case, working for people like Andrew Carnegie and the Rockefellers and others.
Yeah, and not only did you have the military and the militia, but you had the Pinkertons. That was one of their main jobs was union busting, strike busting. And so things got so bad that there was that period when you had the massacre of the miners, that John D. Rockefeller was hated. I mean, literally hated. And so he did the same thing that Alfred Nobel did. He hired somebody to clean up his image. They already were moving toward foundations to control and keep most of their money. And so they went into this fake philanthropic mode when it was really about control, consolidation. perception management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are live and direct. We welcome you, listening audience, to join us today. We'd love to have you in the house today. We're on the mastermind. Today's date is Sunday, the 12th of October. And do join us. We are live. And tell your friends, bring somebody else in. For Africa One, writing in the Rumble chat, my point really being about Urugu's mindset rather than the institutions. And your point is very well taken, beloved. Urugu, the mindset that Urugu is, of course, a term coined by Dr. Marimba Ani in her book of the name Urugu. But it is the mindset of these people who dominate our lives, who it brings me to kind of a point of conversation. Which Urugu are we talking about? Are we talking about the ones, the deep state, the ones who operate without being seen and, deviously put their thing into place? Or are we talking about Urugu as the MAGA mindset with the unhinged Donald Trump in the front? Or is it different expressions of the same mindset?
They're different expressions of the same mindset. They're manifestations, but Urugu is a consciousness, for first and foremost. It's an ethos, but it's also, and that ethos translates it into a cultural unity. Crosses tribes. But see, remember, before there were nation states, there were tribes. Even the Aryans had different tribes, different tribal groups. And their leadership style was Urugu. Might makes right. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. Where we could say, like, some people are celebrating Columbus Day, for example. This is a prime example. The Urugu mentality is that these people in Europe, whether they were the popes, the monarchs, could actually dispatch their people, their subjects, and claim lands far away, and gave them the charge, go and conquer. But the subterfuge was, for some of them, was convert them to Christianity. They're heathens. Convert them to Christianity. But the bottom line was take their wealth. They're going, they're looking for gold, they're looking for treasure. They had already seen, thanks to people like Marco Polo, what was going on around the world. That people had things that they didn't have. It was okay, go over it, let's get that. And again, you had the mercantilism, it was centered in Italy, various states in Italy. And then that concept spread, and you had the royal monopoly trading company. A lot of them that sent people here, particularly because we're Anglophiles and we study British history, the colonies that were here. A lot of them were chartered colonies. So just for example, it was almost like a scam. Because up in Pennsylvania, we had to learn Pennsylvania history. So Pennsylvania history is essentially the King of England owed William Penn's father money. So he didn't have the money or the goods to repay the loan. So he gave him property here in the United States. And that ultimately became Pennsylvania, although in the beginning it was Pennsylvania, parts of Delaware, parts of New Jersey. Just imagine but the arrogance of that. It was almost like, okay, I'll give you this, but what are you going to do with it? But nonetheless, his solution to his problem was to steal somebody else's land.
Yeah. And still they did, and still they do steal people's land. Here's the thing. With the mindset and this ethos, or this deep self that you're talking about, how did why did we allow these people to give us spirituality, Christianity? I don't cuss, but that is so doggone insane that the people who have perpetuated such misery on this earth for so long would then step to us and we would believe them, ultimately yield to their giving us their definition of a benevolent, loving, God-like figure.
Well, that's
It's
not,
crazy. It's
well,
crazy, Robert Junius.
yeah, it's crazy, but it's also complex, and it goes back thousands of years. One way they did it was to undermine our culture. So when you, for example, with Kemet, they came in, they attacked the temples or the mastery schools, killed off the teachers, and they remember they kept one who could give them the history, oral history of it. And it was easy for them to, when they were developing Christianity, we think of Christianity as Europeans, white people. But Christianity, the origins of Christianity started in what they used to call Asia Minor. We know that that area is Asia, but when you look at uh, places like in the Bible, Ephesus and Corinth, and a lot of that is around the Mediterranean. So the notion of a savior, one who was a sacrificial personages to benefit. Yes, so we had that. That's what a Sar and a Set was all about. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where they got it from, right? George Jackson wrote a book called "The World's 16 Crucified Saviors" that talk about
Mm-hmm.
all of them prior to the creation of Jesus. So that's part of it. We had that mythos already, that mythology or that psychodrama, because it's really about ourselves and resurrecting and the being champions of the good over the Seth within ourselves. So that's part of it. The other part of it, they were devious. They used the fact that the people that they contact with, xenophilic, meaning they welcome the strangers as opposed to being xenophobic, which they are, and they took advantage of our kindness. Somebody raised the question, what would have happened if all the people around the world had been xenophobic when these people came on the set? Would the world's history have turned out differently? That's
Yeah.
something to think about. And it's a good question because the Native Americans welcomed them, the Africans welcomed them, even when they revealed their intentions. The Africans, because we were tolerant people, it was like, okay, this is what you believe, fine, we can accept that. It was just when they ratcheted it up and they started browbeating people and using force and violence to impose their quote unquote belief system on other people. This was really
Mm-hmm.
about pacifying people so you could take their land or take them and use them. You know, one of the, and again, people are going to celebrate Christopher Columbus. The whole notion of him being a hero. They only talk about the 3 ships coming. They don't talk about the subsequent voyages that he made and the hell that he unleashed on those people.
Mm-hmm. It seems, from my understanding of how we lived, it seems that we were so comfortable in the environment where we were. We did not exist or develop our culture in a society where it was extremely cold for 4 months a year. So there were a lot of different lifestyle habits that followed the extreme cold. Everything from snuggling up under the bedspread with your wolf to even just being sharing and caring and giving. We had access to fruits, nuts, vegetables, berries, and everything 365 days a year. So we had everything taken, and our spirituality was deeply integrated into that very generous nature for the most part. And it seems that we just didn't understand the nature of other people who came from this cold, deprived mindset. I'm thinking of Michael Bradley's book, The Iceman Inheritance. Now, I think that's a very good book. It's not the only book. There's a bunch of books out there that give us this distinction between African cultural unity and Europeans, the Urugu mindset. But we didn't understand them, and so therefore we made an assumption from our own experiences, an assumption I think was an incorrect assumption, that these people, when they came in their ministerial class, whether they came as Islam or whether they came as Christians or Hebrews, and again, we do acknowledge we developed all of those before sending them out into the world and then having them reflect back in this violence and this conquering mindset. We didn't understand the notion that they could send in their ministers into our midst as a precursor to conquering us. We didn't understand that. And still, I don't think African Americans understand that very well.
No, because I think one of they talk about one of their strategies they call it shock and awe. Well, the Jesuits were one form of shock and awe. They were very ruthless. Again, what they did to Kemet, where they destroyed the mastery school and imposed their cultural values on Kemet. Now, they couldn't change the fundamental character of Kemet immediately, but then when you factor in the invasions of the Arabs on top of the Roman, it's just say the Assyrians, the Persians, and all of them, but we were able to bounce back, and we had resilience against them. But once we had resilience against the Greeks. But once the Romans came in, and then ultimately the Arabs came in, that changed the whole dynamic of the area, and it changed the whole dynamic of Africa. And so I think the shock and awe, the shock of just seeing our cosmology proven untrue, because our cosmology is like, hey, this is a universe. We're connected to the creator. We're vibrating on the same energy level, depending on your willingness to elevate your consciousness or whatever. But nonetheless, we're all related. Ubuntu. So these people come in and they act, they're deceptive, they're devious, they're violent, extremely violent. So this shakes people's, their behavior is the exact opposite of Ma'at. Even Isfit, when you talk and you look at the times, the so-called intermediate areas when Ma'at was challenged and was down and had to have a resurgence and a renaissance, it wasn't as foul as, it was foul, but it wasn't as foul as what the outsiders brought. And so I think it's been a traumatic, trying to bounce back, trying to use our resilience to bounce back from the trauma that is ongoing. It's not post-traumatic, it's ongoing traumatic experiences. I talked about low intensity warfare, and I talked about microaggression. That's what we around the world,
Mm-hmm.
melanated people are experiencing. And it's very
That's right.
complex, very difficult to put your finger on exactly one thing. But the one thing I see is that we were xenophilic as opposed to xenophobic, and that led to our downfall. That kindness, that willingness to be open and supported. The Arawak and the Chianos rowed out in their little canoes and some of them waded out when they saw one of Columbus's vessels was in trouble. Right? That's how kind-hearted they were. And lo and
Mm-hmm.
behold, he he just unleashed his Uruguayan mindset while he was there, and then when he left and came back, when you look at what he came back with, attack dogs, he came back with a flotilla of ships, armor-clad guys, and their goal and their mission was, because he was determined to make himself rich, was to bring back all the gold and riches he could.
That's right. And they did bring the deadliest weapon, and that is the weapon of their diseases.
Yeah.
And that's another conversation. Couple of comments in the chat. We we say your question deserves a book, Kitty. But look at the other faiths such as Islam, Judaism, and Hinduism too. And Google writes, Sawubona, you question ethics. I question how we blindly follow their religion. And last comment builds on that. Queen Mother Kashiba writes, the violent Abrahamic faiths make up a large portion of the world. And I do agree the Abrahamic faiths have the record of the most damaging, destructive record on the planet, followed by Hinduism, because little before it didn't really manifest until after the end of the British conquering of India. But India turned out to be very, very violent toward its own distinct faiths within the nation. And last point I'll make is that we are in this country told that the we cannot say anything negative about one of the three Abrahamic faiths. And of course, there are sanctions and penalties. You can lose your job. You can even now, if the new legislation goes through, I think it's stuck in the House, the new legislation or the Senate, one of the two, you can't even criticize Israel. It's considered to be a violation of the anti-Semitic code of conversations that we're allowed to have. And I don't think that legislation has passed. But the point is, well, what if Christians and Muslims extended that same prohibition on conversation that the Zionists have been able to project? That's going to make it quite crazy, isn't it?
Well, it already exists. It's just not codified. You're right. It passed the House. It's still in committee in the Senate. I think if you look at what happened a couple of weeks ago when Charlie Kirk was murdered, and they started pushing, we have to deal with hate speech. This was going to be their rationale to get it out of Senate. They were going to change the wording so it wasn't specifically just anti-Semitism, supposedly, because that's a bogus phrase anyway, because the people that we're referring to are not Semites, have no connection whatsoever to the Judeans or the Hebrews. So that's a bogus term. But they're using, as they say, never let a good crisis go to waste. So Charlie Kirk, who was a minor figure, but when you start to do the research and look at who was behind him, who propped him up, who made him a major figure on that set, a lot of them were Jews. And now you have the right, and I know this is a tangent, but
Mm-hmm.
bear with me. Now you have the right saying, well, he was waking up, he was becoming aware, and he was becoming, uh, he reversed, he pivoted from his pro-Israel, pro-Zionist position. And I did see some videos where he challenged the October 7th narrative, and then there were people who were saying that he was in fear of his life, he was losing support and what have you. But again, they control the narrative. They have made him a hero. They have made him a saint.
That's right.
Just like they did, just like they're doing to Trump, just like they did to Ronald Reagan, just like they did to Abraham Lincoln, and on and on and on.
Well, right. And they can retell the story as time goes on. They'll retell it and retell it and retell it until it becomes absolute truth that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone shooter in Dealey Plaza, 60 something years ago. So, yeah, we go forward. I'm about to take a major pivot, but one more comment on this topic. Queen Mother Kashipa writes, 1984, Brave New World 1 and 2 and Animal Farm should be your child's bedtime stories instead of Little Red Riding Hood. Start early. And I completely agree with that. Start early. Teach your children the truth. And of course, then we got to deal with the other mythologies that we keep perpetuating. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the myth of the American ethos, what they call it, Garner Myrdal called it the American Creed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Horatio Alger myth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do agree. I'm going to take a pivot right now. There's one story coming out of Africa I think we need to be monitoring. It appears to be happening as we speak. From AlJazeera.com, dated today, October 12, 2025, by Yasraj Sharma, writing from Al Jazeera. The headline, Madagascar President Warns of Attempt to Seize Power. What to know? An elite military unit that installed the president in 2009 has joined Gen Z protesters calling for his resignation. So the Madagascar presidency, they've been in power since 2009. That's 14 years now, 15, 16 years, is now being threatened by Gen Z protesters. Originally, it says the campaign began as a campaign against frequent power outages and water shortages, is now apparently spreading to the military units. Have you heard anything about what's happening there in Madagascar?
Now that you mentioned it, I just went up and looked at it. So this is trending, and the president is saying a coup is underway after soldiers joined anti-government demonstrations. So this is going on as we speak.
Well, while I have been very supportive of the president and what's his name, Rajolina, Andry Rajolina, I've been very supportive, mainly because of his stance after the pandemic hit, and they came up with COVID Organics, a wonderful solution that did spread to at least 9 to 11 other African countries, and maybe more than that. I do think that 16 years in power, he needs to let it go and prepare another generation of leadership to follow.
Yeah, and this will probably sound crazy to some. I'm just not a fan of the notion of democracy as it is preached by Europeans. I don't, when we look at governance as it was created by indigenous people, Aboriginal people, the ruthlessness is an option, is a possibility, but that was not the theme. You know, when you're coming out of a system of Urugu in my eye, And I recognize we're not perfect. I recognize there are challenges. As Duaro always tells us, we came up with solutions to these issues, to these quote unquote problems. So there was always a sense of balance and harmony and participation in indigenous and aboriginal cultures. When it came to governance, you the way that society based on experience and tradition, and because there was very little secrecy, the village idiot was not going to become the chief. The village idiot was not going to be on the council that sat around discussing, particularly in these stateless, what the Europeans call stateless societies. They were just not going to, because they posed a threat to Ubuntu. Democracy as it is now, we see it playing out in this country in particular, where there's no scrutiny on the person's character. And keep in mind that Dewar and I always talk about one of the goals of African society and African culture is to create good character. Ubuntu, Ma'at. That's not a priority here. The priority here is if you can raise enough money to buy advertisement, change people's perception, steal the election, that's what happens. That's democracy. It's not about the will of the people. Whereas in an indigenous society, in fact, it's funny because Benjamin Franklin and a delegation of Europeans, of colonials, American colonials, met with the Iroquois people in 1750 something. I forgot the date. Where they explained to the Europeans their concepts of governance and of participatory governance within their society, where every family had a vote and could speak. And one of the things that I learned years ago when I was in this organization and we looked at various forms of governance, consensus is the best, but it's the most protracted and the most convoluted because you got to take into consideration everybody's contribution. Everybody was expected, those who had reached a certain level of life experiences, to participate and share and contribute to the debate or the discussion, which takes a long time. The exact opposite of autocracy, where somebody arbitrarily said, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is the way we're going to go, and I'm the boss, and I say, you do what I say, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not a fan of democracy as it has been imposed on the continent of Africa or around the world by Europeans, the most insane people on this planet, the most, well, and at the very least, to be kind, the most immature of all the human family on this planet.
Yeah, I do agree. Looking in the chat, we see a comment from Queen Mother Kashiba. She writes, Madagascar would be an excellent, here, one second, would be an excellent place to put a U.S. base. What do you think? And she says, of course, I'm being sarcastic. She's kidding, of course. And I did post up a link, and the link is from a contemporary news story. It talks about why, no, I'm talking about responding of why the U.S. would want to put a base in Madagascar. So therefore, it's not unfeasible that the U.S. or CIA might be behind this coup. But the story is from not too long ago, the story UK, United Kingdom, retains Diego Garcia military base, but concedes sovereignty over the island group in the Indian/African Ocean. And so looking there, I don't know what it's the Chagos Archipelago. So the British conceded sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago, but still retain the military base for a period of at least 99 years to come. And this is an East African territory where it's situated. So I don't know. I hope I'm not being too confused, and I'm a little scattered. I'm reading the story as well. But this coup d'etat could very well likely be an attempt on the part of the British and or Americans or both of them to retain a military presence in that part of the world, which actually would be closer to East Africa than the Chagos archipelago. Your thought? And
Well,
the Chagos archipelago did belong to Mauritius, which is a African Ocean African nation.
yeah, and Mauritius is going through an election because I went to every Sunday before the program. I'll go to All Africa or African News. So
Mm-hmm.
that's news. I think they're preparing for an election or something like that. But to me, when you are an empire, particularly an empire in decline or an empire who feels threatened, and I know she was being facetious, but that makes sense for the United States to put a military base there because they could have access to the Indian Ocean and leapfrog from there. Although there's no real need because they have a lot of bases in Iraq and uh, in that region. So from the standpoint of a dying empire, I think that's something that they could have, even if it was a drone base or a CIA base that so they
Mm-hmm.
could force the area,
Yeah.
particularly because they're involved in so much mischief in the Horn of Africa.
Mm-hmm. Reading a little bit from the story again, the story entitled "UK retained Diego Garcia military base but concedes sovereignty over the islands." It says two quick paragraphs. As part of the agreement, UK will return key strategic military base on the island it shares with the US military for an initial period of 99 years, while the East African state Mauritius exercises sovereignty over the island chain. And a formal treaty has yet to be signed. The treaty, when ratified, will, quote, address the wrongs of the past, quote, unquote, stated the U.S. State Department, referring to the contentious means by which the two countries agreed to depopulate between 1,500 and 2,000 Chagosians from Diego Garcia, the largest island in the archipelago, ahead of the construction of the base in 1971. So looks like that was and continues to be an ongoing case of ethnic cleansing, genocide, removal of an entire people from their homelands.
Well, or at the very least, like you're seeing in Japan and Okinawa, places like that, where you have contentious clashes, where they they feel they have the right to come in, establish some territory, and just bogart the people and reduce them to prostitutes and dependents and beggars.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds like
Again,
genocide to me too.
yeah, well, again, it's Urugu. And so when it comes to Urugu, we're like fish in a tank, fishbowl. We're dependent
Mm-hmm.
on the water, but we really don't pay that much attention to it until it gets really, really cloudy, or the
That's
filters
right.
are not working, or you don't change the water, or you don't have enough bottom feeders, or whatever the thing is when you're dealing with an aquarium. I used to have an aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we we've been brainwashed into believing that America is the greatest country in the world, capitalism is the greatest system, Christianity is the greatest religion, white people are the greatest thing since sliced bread, and
Mm-hmm.
on and on and on. And we're overwhelmed with it because we've been brainwashed to accept it. There were rewards and punishments if you didn't, or rewards if you did, And so that's how we exist, unless you were totally independent. And very few black people were totally independent in this country. And believe it or not, we're less so now than we were 80 years ago. Because at least 80 years ago, we had a lot of family farms. Even with all the problems that the farmers are having and will have, and I was going to talk about that later when we talk about the government shutdown. They at least had access, even a small farm. You could have your own garden and you did preserves. And I know you're familiar with this. Preserve, if you had sheep, cows, or chickens or whatever, you could sustain yourself with that. And I know dealing with our farm when my uncle was alive, there was a lot of cooperation. When it was time to slaughter a hog, he was too old to do it himself, so there were other groups that came in and helped them do it. And a lot of them were relatives or cousins or whatever. So once we were removed from that and into the concrete and asphalt, we became totally dependent on the system. And the system was geared to keep us down, with the apartheid. And even post-apartheid, the so-called civil rights era, integration for white people just meant, okay, we can give them enough so we can boost our own economy. We can give them some jobs, create the illusion that they're included, the illusion of inclusion, and get them hooked on our gizmos and gadgets. Get them hooked on our usury, the mortgages, so they'll be on the hook to us for 30 years, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. That's what that system is about. Again, this is a tangent, but juxtapose that with an indigenous culture. They don't own the land. They view themselves as caretakers and stewards of the land. They don't have a mortgage. The whole concept of buying a house is absurd when they use materials that are readily available to them. And through Ubuntu and collective work, reciprocity, they made sure that you had living quarters. So unless there was a disaster, there was no such thing as homelessness. I mean, just look at the difference between indigenous and aboriginal people who focused on the group survival, and the group being as supportive and as self-sustaining as possible, versus what we have now. But we've been brainwashed to think that what we have now is we're in the greatest stage of humanity ever. That's
right.
Nonsense.
Yeah, Queen Mother in the Rumble chat seems to agree with you. She says, yes, look at the animals, the deer, to be specific. They operate on a consensus basis before moving as a group. Brother Junius, you are correct, she writes. And I wanted to revisit this idea of consensus between nations. I'm looking at Al Jazeera here one more time, and asked the question in the headline, which countries have joined South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice? More than 10 countries are supporting Israel's genocide case, South Africa's genocide case against Israel's war on the Palestinians and on Gaza. Those countries that have joined this case include South Africa filed the case December 29. It wasn't this year. That was a couple of years ago. Nicaragua applied to join on February 8th, the following winter. Belgium declared intention to join on March 11th. Colombia applied to join on April 5th. Turkey, May 1. Libya on May 10. Egypt, May 12. Maldives, I should say, on May 13. Mexico applied to join on May 24th, Ireland on May 28th, Chile declared intention to join on June 2nd, and Palestine applied to join on June 3rd. Spain declared intention to join on June 6th, and of course, Palestine joining it now that Palestine is being recognized by the majority of the world's governments as an official state.
Well, I saw something and I didn't read it. It was the headline was saying that Africa being urged to reform rather than leave the ICC. And in the past, we've talked about the shortcomings of the ICC, particularly as it deals with Africa. How the colonial powers and imperialist powers are never brought to task for their atrocities. But yet, anytime any one of those powers raises a complaint about an African nation, the ICC is ready to come in and intervene. And even to some of the extent to the lesser powers in Europe, particularly in Eastern Europe or the so-called communist countries. So I commend the South African government, and we were cheering them on, but we knew that this was going to bring about the ire and wrath of the Zionists. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to these countries that you've mentioned who are supportive of them vis-a-vis the Zionists, because they are ruthless. These people are very unforgiving, and they don't tolerate you messing up their agenda.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of brings us to what has happened this past week. The Israeli government and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump, marking a significant development in a 2-year conflict in Gaza. Signed in Egypt, October 9, 2025, was ratified by Israel's Security Cabinet and coalition government, with the ceasefire taking effect at noon local time today, October 12, and that is 5 a.m. Eastern time. So your thoughts on Trump's 20-point peace plan includes the cessation of hostilities, etc. What do you have to say about the Palestinian peace plan? A week from now, will we be talking about it is holding, or will we be saying it was another attempt and it was disgraced by their behavior subsequently?
Well, I saw something this morning that the Israelis had violated already. There were 50 deaths reported. So-called, see, the thing for the Zionists, despite their influence and control of the media, the optics were not good. They were losing the PR perception battle. That's why they're moving to take over TikTok so they can get to the younger people who use TikTok, because a lot of them were posting material that was pro-Gaza. So they're going to get to that. The Zionists have violated every ceasefire that has, and every agreement that has been brokered or attempted to be brokered, particularly with Gaza, because it's part and parcel of their agenda to wipe them off the face of the earth. Donald Trump was under pressure because he had bragged about he would end it as soon as he got into office, and he's failed. And so they're doing this. I don't expect them to hold a ceasefire or any kind of peace negotiations, short of them just wiping that out. And that, remember, that was one of his plans. He was going to turn it into the Riviera East on the Mediterranean. So I really don't, given what I know about Greater Israel and the Zionist role in this one world government or the new world order, I don't look for any real peace. If you mean you leave the people of Gaza alone, you help them by providing aid, because part of the war crime is that they withheld aid, food, water, medical supplies,
Mm-hmm.
and it remains to be seen how they're going to resolve that issue because they don't value the life of those people. Remember, the hardcore rabid Zionist is a racist and race supremacy consciousness, and so they view the Goy as expendable, um, and that we're just stepping stools to what they want to accomplish in their attempt to rule the world. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I just saw a snippet of Candace Owens, how she's talking about how she and Tucker Carlson are under a relentless attack by the Zionists. Last week, I wanted to talk about there were rumors that Israel, the Zionists, is paying quote unquote influencers $7,000 per post. Imagine if you and I lack the integrity, given our skills in wordsmithing and communication. Think how much money we could make if we sold out and began a pro-Zionist campaign.
Mm-hmm. And also that $7,000 per post, how much of that is from the funds the U.S. has set aside for support of the Zionist state? So ultimately, we're paying them to propagandize and brainwash us. So yeah, it's
Again,
quite a dilemma.
yeah, but again, with the synchronicity, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the Zionists and the global surveillance. Well, I mentioned it earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about because I wanted to talk about last week the Ellison Empire, the
Mm-hmm.
father, the Oracle, Skydance, the uh, the Paramount Global, the purchase of
Mm-hmm.
CBS, MTV, Showtime, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, the Warner Brothers, Discovery, CNN, HBO is pending, TikTok, and all of this is
That's the Ellison
designed.
Empire.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and they the whole piece is designed to determine and maintain perception management and control, even more rabid than already exists, where you already have five corporations that control all the major media in this country, print, electronic, and social media in this country, as well as the what I call the mind control, the surveillance network, the
Mm-hmm.
um, let's see what. So I was going to talk about that.
Yeah, and we also that goes very deeply into Hollywood, the film making mechanism in the United States. And am I correct? Was I reading Metro Goldwyn Mayer is somehow involved in this new Ellison acquisition, or Metro Goldwyn Mayer? We already knew what it was in the first place.
Right, I didn't see them on the list,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't matter. They're all part and parcel of the same thing because in the book Empire of Their Own, they explain
Mm-hmm.
how they set out to control that. And when you look at Warner Brothers, MGM, and some of these others, because even TriStar, that was supposed to be Sidney Poitier and Newman and a couple other stars. Some of those people are obviously Zionists, and of course, you need money. So they're getting money from them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so the narratives that we've been fed are not true. It's just part propaganda, disingenuous drivel. But the truth is out there. The truth is that with Gaza, they have engaged in ethnic cleansing and genocide. The optics of all the buildings and the rubble and the suffering children undermine any attempts for them to pat themselves on the back and say we did the right thing. And who knows what price Trump is going to pay for this, because he's totally under their control. So he's sort of deviating from the strip, because they're at the point where they're putting pedal to the metal. They don't even care. They don't care what you say.
Now, was this recent kind of pivot on the part of the U.S. government on Palestine and Palestinian liberation, statehood, the peace, and all of that? Was this in part due to wide-scale pattern of abandonment of the MAGA ideologies and goals by so many Americans, be they Christians or be they MAGA supporters, who do not like the fact that AIPAC has become dominant of the U.S. government? Of course, you and I have known about this for, what, 20 years or more even, but some of the people just don't know. Is it possible in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder, there was an anti-AIPAC, an anti-Zionist movement that began birth underneath the whole group of people? Was there a problem there?
Well, I think it was evident prior to the Charlie Kirk murder. Many of the MAGA people took Trump at his word when he said no more foreign war. They took him at his word when he said he was the president of peace. They took him at his word when he said he would solve these problems, that he's a great deal maker. So we need to look at how he has systematically disappointed some of his supporters. They were upset already behind him not bringing to light what's already out there about Epstein, in terms of his involvement with the Mossad, his involvement with a lot of them don't even care about him being a honey trap and white-mailing an extortion scheme. They're appalled at them abusing 12 and 13-year-old girls and boys, by the way. To show you how they are obfuscating and covering things, you had Whitney Webb, who did an excellent job, excellent book, United States of Blackmail. You had other people who the connection with the Maxwell family, going back, looking at Jeffrey Epstein's history as a traitor. I don't mean traitor in the sense of betraying the country. I'm talking about a traitor on Wall Street. How he got in trouble and that was swept under the rug, and how then a lot of people are saying, well, he really wasn't that good. He was supported by these other people, and that gave him entree into this other sphere. And all the people who were on the Lolita Express, I just saw something came out about Prince Philip. The guy, there was a guy in Europe who stepped down because he said some good things about Jeffrey Epstein. So the MAGA people are upset about that. They're upset about, a lot of them are giving him a pass on the COVID thing, the Operation Warp Speed, but they're upset about Big Pharma. And now they're seeing him embrace Big Pharma or the technocrats. So some of them are reluctant to continue to support him because they feel betrayed. Now, the Steve Bannons, Bannon, and all that group, they're going to be hardcore supporters. I personally, I don't make, and I'll admit that I didn't know Charlie Kirk and know anything about him until he was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
I did some research. The narrative that they're saying about him is typical PR BS. He was discovered that his whole program that he created with this older guy who was 71 years old. He was the one who introduced him to all the money that was coming his way, and he was able to leverage his contact with the Trump family, the Trump boys, his sons, into this position where he had the support of what he was doing. He had the financial backing and support. And then a brother pointed this out to me and said, yeah, okay, he made his bones going around debating college kids, picking on college kids, supposedly open debate and open discussion, and he would debate some college kids. He's 30-some years old, beating up on them, and they don't do a whole lot. And that's, what the right wingers want, the Koch brothers and the whole list of, Forbes did a whole piece on the people who are behind him. So
That's right.
Anybody who believes that he's what the mainstream media says he is, I got some swampland I can sell.
Yeah. And even then, the mainstream, while at the same time are creating this hero myth that Charlie Kirk was what he said he was, they are also turning their back on two of their other creations, and that is Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson.
Well, see, again, the ruling elites are not monolithic. Yes, they share some of the same values, the same Urugu consciousness, but some of their aims and objectives are different. So the third rail in American life is if you criticize Israel, you criticize the Jews, that's the kiss of death.
Yeah, it's a good point you make.
So those two are engaged in that. They're spitting, not only they're spitting on the third rail, they're trying to undermine some of its power. So I just saw a snippet from Candace Owens this morning of how she's saying that they've unleashed, this is my paraphrasing of what she said, they've unleashed the hellhounds on her and Tucker Carlson.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We're going to begin to wrap it up. I'm going to get out of the studio right at the top of the hour today. But a couple comments have come in. Queen Mother Kashiba has contributed quite a bit to the show today. She writes, number one, great show today. Hit the like button and hit the $ button below. That is down below where you, the listeners, can contribute to LIB Radio and help us to raise the funds to stay on the air. It got a little hairy earlier this year, and we were really thinking about shutting it down. We had a pretty good fund drive, and we're going to have to do it again in the beginning in December. So we got another month and a half before we turn back on the fund drive. But if people don't want to hear us essentially begging for money and begging to continue to survive, they can help out a little bit. Help goes a long way. So if you hit the $ or the gift sign below, you can make a contribution to LIB Radio. Queen Mother Kashiba also writes, also Zionist further control media have bought CBS. We talked about that with the Ellison sons now being put in charge of this whole thing. And Ellison is one of the richest, I think one of the third richest man in the world, behind Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. So he cannot be dismissed at all, this Zionist wealth. And of course, Baba Juniors, you and I know that the people, the real wealth on this planet, do not announce themselves. They say hidden in the shadows very, very clearly. So we're always aware of that. Queen Mother Kashiba asked the white church goer to look at the front cover of the Financial Times from Friday. It's a picture of Palestinian children. They are mulattoes. Can't take that. In the Holy Land, oh my God. And that brings us to a whole other issue, that the density of African genetics in this part of the planet, in the Fertile Crescent, from Yemen, which is on the Arabian Peninsula, on further up north, is really quite it's quite obvious to others who look at them that many of these Palestinian children are quite dark skinned.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, that peninsula that once was part of Africa. You have what was the original name for Turkey?
Turkey?
No, that's
Oh,
that's
oh, there was an Anatolia or something like
yeah,
that.
Anatolia was
Mm-hmm.
jet black, as was India, and you're going on. And thanks to the great work of Anoko Rashidi, he's shown all that. And all you have to do is look at some of his books and films and lectures, and you'll see all of that.
That's right.
What we're
So,
seeing is, again, the Zionists are not Semites. They have no connection to Judea or the Hebrews or the Israelites whatsoever.
mm-hmm. And the Ashkenazis are the Zionists, and the Sephardics were never Zionists. Zionism was imposed upon Sephardic Jews, if I'm correct. Am I right?
Well, I think that the Sephardic Jews were the ones who were very influential in the rise of the mercantilist class in Italy and Holland and some of the other places, and then they once the Ashkenazim, once the Khazars adopted a form of Judaism, and I always say that, a form of Judaism. A lot of the Zionists came from the ranks of the Ashkenazim, but they had the support of some of the Sephardic Jews, and there's other groups who went on to found the banks, the original stock market in Holland and all that. But the basic line is, these people that we see around us, and they say they're only 2%, that's a lie. That, number one, their demographic is much larger than that, because they have the ability. They've always had the ability, because they're quote unquote white. They could change their names. They could do the cosmetic surgery and all that kind of stuff. But from our perspective, none of that is the issue. The issue for us is their behavior, their consciousness. And
That's right.
when you're dealing with people who laugh at a group of people who are being starved to death,
Mm-hmm.
again, like I said, check and see that there's an indication that 50 people were killed after the ceasefire, before the Israeli forces withdrew back to this predetermined line. So again, Urugu is the opposite of Ma'at. So Ma'at is about truth, then Urugu is about falsehood. If Ma'at is about harmony, stability, peace, reciprocity, justice, you know what Urugu is, and we've seen that. Most brainwashed Christians are not going to criticize Joshua in the Bible for slaughtering the people of Canaan. When you look at the sections in the Bible where their idea of God, their notion of God, the God of their understanding, tells them, after telling them, thou shalt not kill, to go and slaughter everything in a certain place, and then punishes them because they didn't do it, because they kept some of the fatted calf, and they kept some of the jewelry and some of the women or whatever. So their idea of God got mad at them and punished them for not doing it. But we don't raise those questions because we're not, number one, we're not critical thinkers. And number two, in the past, when you raise those questions, you got punished. You can't make white people uncomfortable. You can't challenge them, obviously. I remember I was looking at Nightline, and there was this issue about Egypt, and they made the mistake of putting Malefi Asante on the panel that night. They had this big map of Egypt in the backdrop, and he simply said, Egypt is in Africa. Egypt was an African country.
Mm-hmm.
Just turned around and pointed to the backdrop. All the people on that panel, and it might have been four white guys, or two white guys and maybe two Arabs, they couldn't say anything. He just shut them down just by pointing to the map, because obviously the producers didn't know who he was, and they put that prop up there, and he used it to his advantage to point out how pivotal Africa was in Egyptian history.
Mm-hmm.
But we're caught up in, we believe that, the Hebrews were slaves. That's preposterous. The pyramids were built thousands of years before there was any Harabu.
That's right. That's right. Go down, Moses, way down to Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. African Americans still sing that nonsense. They still sing that absolute nonsense. You and I trying to explain to our people that it's backwards. The story is absolute backwards.
Well, we try to, you'll see a blank stare when you try to tell people the vast demographic of the ancient world, particularly the ancient world that is focused in biblical attention, was black. They just start stammering and stumbling. And white people really get apoplectic when they say, well, it doesn't make any difference. Okay, well, it doesn't make any difference. Then painting like the Bible depicts it. Woolly hair, bronze complected, et cetera, Put that in your, go back and look at your original Madonna and Child paintings and depictions that they were black people. Some of them jet black. So check that out. But again, it's uncomfortable when you have to confront the fact that you've been lied to. And
that's right.
The question becomes, what do you exchange for the lies? Do you have access to the truth? And are you willing to go through the arduous process of vetting what we say? Because I don't say, don't take everything I say as face value or gospel. Check me out and check me if I'm incorrect.
That's right.
But so our people aren't willing to do that.
Well, we're going to do the best we can here at the Mastermind and on LIB Radio to give our listeners the truth, and to the best of our abilities, the truth will set us free. We're going to begin to wrap it up. Final story, or any final stories did you want to put on the table before we finish the program today?
No, well, I just wanted to keep abreast. I don't want to go into it. I just mentioned this. Keep abreast of how this government shutdown is going to impact everyday people over and beyond your family members who might be working without pay, the furloughs, the job, where they're getting fired. Just look at how it's going to impact you if you want to travel, some of the things with the Social Security, some of that they're undermanned, et cetera, et cetera. Before I close, this is my last statement. We need to support LIB. There's a website called Reader Supported News. And Keith said he just doesn't want to beg. I'm on their mailing list, I get their newsletter. Half the time I don't open it because they're begging for money, always begging for money. Yet they survive. We're barely surviving, thanks to the support of some generous and committed people. There are ways you can support. You can become a
Mm-hmm.
sponsor, meaning you can make a one-time donation. You can make a sustained donation of any amount that you so choose. You could make a contribution, or you could subscribe. You know, they talk about hit the like button, or you could become. In some places, you could like there were opportunities for you to be supportive that way. We cannot take this for granted. Things are as bad as things we see things are now. They're going to get worse. And this is not hyperbole. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just saying engage in pattern recognition. Look at what Trump and the people who are pulling his strings have done thus far. Do some research on dark enlightenment. Do some research on how these people are so ruthless. They will go all over the world killing folks. And I'm talking about the Zionists. Look at their history. When we talk about the American dilemma, how they were wrestling back in those days about what to do with us. And then look at what LIB radio stands for. Look at what we've attempted to do for all these 20-some years. Then I say, from my perspective, look at all the outlets and stations that have gone under. Why? Not because of incompetence, not because we didn't know how to master the technology, but because of lack of support. They were overwhelmed trying to carry that load all by themselves. Or even when we attempted, because Delani had subscriptions. People bought time. They brokered time on Harambe Radio. But even that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It's incumbent upon us. If you say you believe in Ubuntu, if you say you believe in Ma'at, if you say you believe in Nguzo Saba, if you say you believe in Black people, our potential, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately this is a test. Do you believe, and are you willing to, what sacrifice are you willing to make to keep something this valuable alive and well?
It's a simple question. Are white patrons obligated to support a voice that opposes so much of what they are about? I mean, we talk about Yorugu all the time. We talk about the Zionists all the time. Other institutions, we talk about MAGA and the Trumps and Republicans. I talk very badly about the Democrats and liberals, etc. So they're not expected, should never be expected, to keep us open. If we don't do this for ourselves or with ourselves, then we'll lose another one. And haven't we already lost too many outlets, media outlets, giving us the truth, Baba Juniors?
Yes. I used to write for Del Jones taught me how to self-syndicate. And I
Mm-hmm.
was writing for several newspapers in the Philadelphia, Delaware Valley area. Only one of them is left. I
Hmm.
used to write Black Suburban Journal, that's gone. Philadelphia New Observer, that's gone. The West Side Weekly still around. Scoop is still around. Um, there's a couple other papers that they're no longer in existence due to
Mm-hmm.
technology and the internet, or also more than likely because of lack of support. I know
That's
what it's
right.
like to have somebody say, "Hey, man, thank you for your services, but we just can't do it." The other paper, the Real News. I was the editor of Real News with Terry Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Black
Mm-hmm.
Business was also Terry Johnson, uh, and those were great publications. Not just because I was involved in it, but because they had a vision and they wanted to provide information and uplift to our people. Wouldn't you want to support an entity that is its mission? And so if you don't, then obviously you're not prepared, because there's no set amount that we're asking. It's just, hey, just support. Just show us your support.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Thank you, Baba Junius.
by the way, we don't
Mm-hmm.
get paid to do this. I mean,
No,
most
it's
of the
too
money that he
bad.
goes, the money he gets is just the number one to stay current and to pay the bills, because some of these streaming services that he uses, you got to pay. Some of
That's
them.
right. Yeah, that is true. That is so true. We're gonna wrap it up right now. Final thoughts, Baba Junius, as we close out the latest session of the Mastermind.
That was my final thought for this week.
Awesome.
Stay strong and don't sleep on some of the things that we're talking to you about, particularly the travails of the government and how that's going to impact you on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. So very important. We will be joined again next week, Brother Dwara. We expect him to be with us today.
Yeah, now next
So
week I'll be away. I'll be on my way home, so I won't be on.
all right, well, next week we'll swap out Baba Junius for Brother Dwara and still keep going strong.
And
I'm very,
shine,
very,
on. Yeah.
that's right. Shine, swam on, and shine still glows like the noonday sun. Thank you, Baba Juniors, for all you do for all of us here at LAB Radio, LAB TV, and LivingBlackDark.com. We are so grateful. I'll see you in 2 weeks right here.
Right. See ya.
All right.
See ya.
Peace and prosperity to you, Brother Junior. So, I cut him off in mid-sentence there. And we're going to go ahead and move forward. It's been a good show today on LAB Radio. I hope you did learn some things about things going on in the world that you had not been aware of. If so, you will know what to do insofar as the support that we have been asking for. I want to thank you all for all that you do, all of you, for all of us. We do acknowledge your generosity, and we are so appreciative of what you do. And on that note, I think I have pretty much gotten through everything we need to be talking about. You've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LAB Radio, LAB TV. We are living in black.com. So tell your friends to tell their friends that we have our own now. And what we have here, we are grateful for. We are going to build on, continue to build on, and hopefully by the end of this year, we will be in a solid position, a very solid position to keep it up and to keep it going for the next year and beyond. You've been tuned in to LAB Radio, LAB TV, and on livinginblack.com. Tell your friends to tell their friends to join us. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.